Hannah Dustin, born Hannah Emerson, December 23, 1657, was a colonial Massachusetts Puritan mother of 9 who was taken captive by Abenaki people from Quebec during King William's War with her newborn daughter during the raid on Haverhill in 1697, in which 27 colonists were killed. While detained on an island in the Merrimack River in present-day Boscawen, New Hampshire, she killed and scalped 10 of the Native American family members holding them hostage with the assistance of 2 other captives. She claimed the Abenaki had killed her baby during the journey to the island. What most modern retellings of the story leave out is the fact that the Abenaki tribe were Catholic converts who were mastered by French Jesuits. Surprisingly, the New York Times writes honestly about this important detail. Quote, "To judge Mrs. Dustin, we must peer through the lens of her time and place. She was taken captive at the height of King William's War, both a campaign of terror and a religious contest, with English Protestants vying with French Catholics for control of the New World. Inured to the cold, swift of foot, and brutal in their tactics, the Abenaki who raided Haverhill belonged to the main river tribes. They had been baptized into the Catholic faith by the French Jesuits and sent to plunder the English towns." Unquote. The Jesuits had in fact been banned from the Massachusetts Bay Colony back in 1647. For a full account of the story of Hannah Dustin, one may wish to read Heroism of Hannah Dustin, together with the Indian Wars of New England, by Robert Bodie Caverly. Here we have some passages from the aforementioned book on Mrs. Dustin, highlighting the role of the Jesuits in sending their Catholicized Indian thugs to wreak havoc on the colonists. Quote, "When the explorers of New England first made their appearance here, the Indians generally entertained them with a generous feeling, seldom, if ever, doubting their sincerity and truth. But after a series of years had elapsed, partly by reason of the wild, cruel, and uncultivated nature of the Indian himself, and of his unstable, treacherous disposition, and partly by reason of the want of kindness, discretion, honesty, and fairness of individual white men, who from time to time violated law and justice, and partly from the secret machinations of French Jesuits and their hirelings, who took an interest in advising and instigating the northern and eastern tribes to make war upon the English, the native Indian, who had theretofore been master of the soil, began to consider himself in the place of a degraded servant. Hence he manifested himself true to his nature, and at every provocation, real or surmised, he sprang forth from his secret hiding places, an implacable enemy to the white man, quick at resentment and reckless in revenge. Notwithstanding the agency which some of the French in Canada had in starting and perpetuating at least a part of the Indian wars in New England, yet they were led to see the Indian's true nature and character. They named him, as some think accurately, les homines des lois, man-brutes of the forest." Unquote. Quote, "It will be seen, as we advance in these annals, that the wars in New England were, in the main, the offshoots of the conflicting powers of foreign countries. For instance, whenever France and England declared war, that event was but the signal to the French Jesuits in Canada to incite and encourage the tribes to annoy, to murder, and to destroy the English population on this side of the great waters." Unquote. In the following century, the Jesuits would continue their proxy attacks on the New England settlers when Jesuit priest Sebastian Rale directed American Indians in violent assaults on Puritan New Englanders, known as Father Rale's War. Quote, "The English found an active enemy in the person of one Sebastian Rale, a French Jesuit who had established a church at Nordwag, where he resided. He was a man of good sense, learning, and address, and an enthusiastic for his country and religion. By a compliance with the Indian mode of life, and a gentle condescending deportment, he gained their affections, and they implicitly followed his dictates. Knowing the power of superstition over the savage mind, he took advantage of this, and of their prejudice against the English, in order to strengthen their attachment to the French interest. He even made the offices of devotion serve as incentives to their ferocity, and kept a flag on which was depicted a cross surrounded by bones and arrows, which he used to hoist on a pole at the door of his church when he gave them absolution, previously to their engaging in any warlike enterprise. As the passions of the Indians were inflamed by Rale, and they received every encouragement from the French, they began in the year 1720 to molest the English settlers in a variety of ways. In the succeeding winter, a party was ordered to Nordwag to seize Rale. He escaped before they could surround the house, leaving his box of papers, which they conveyed away upon their return without doing any other damage. Among those papers were his letters of correspondence with the Governor of Canada, by which it clearly appeared he was deeply engaged in exciting the Indians to a rupture and had promised to assist them. This attempt to seize their spiritual father stimulated the Indians to revenge. After committing several hostile acts, they made a furious attack on the town of Brunswick, which they destroyed. This action determined the government to issue a declaration of war against them, which was published at Boston and Portsmouth on the 25th of July. The devastations of the Indians during this and the subsequent year caused the government to resolve on an expedition to Nordwag. The captains Moulton and Harmon, both at New York, each at the head of a company of 100 men, executed their orders with great address. They completely invested and surprised that village, killed the obnoxious Jesuit with about 80 of his Indians, recovered 3 captives, destroyed the chapel, and brought away the plate and furniture of the altar and the devotional flag as trophies of the victory." Unquote. Quote, "By March of the next year, Shute was warning the colony against Monsieur Rale, the French Jesuit, specifically. Shute reported that a detachment of New Englanders stationed in the eastern settlements had been sent to capture the Jesuit, but that Rale had escaped, leaving behind incriminating letters which made plain that Rale, as the agent of the French-Canadian government, was inciting the Indians against His Majesty's liege subjects, promising the Indians ammunition enough to drive the English from their just settlements. This confirmed what the Massachusetts leadership and the eastern settlers believed all along, that the French-Canadian government and ultimately the French crown was using Jesuit deceptions to co-opt the Indians into murdering Englishmen, capturing their families, and burning their towns, all part of a hellish plot to annihilate their religious and mercantile liberties." Unquote. Quote, "The British had long entertained images of the evil French Catholic other, and New Englanders had regularly heard about the lies and agitations of the Jesuits among the Indians of New France, most notably in Cotton Mather's relation of Bommasin's confession in 1699. Bommasin was a captured Indian chieftain who reportedly told a minister in Boston in 1692 that, quote, "The French taught him that the Lord Jesus Christ was of the French nation, that his mother, the Virgin Mary, was a French lady, that they were the English who had murdered him, and that all that would recommend themselves unto his favor must revenge his quarrel upon the English as far as they can." Unquote.